You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Mathias Kop Balsløw, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Today I have a very special guest on the show because I've invited my old friend and accomplice and also my colleague, Mathias Balsløw, to join me on the podcast. Welcome, Matthias.
Thank you very much, Lasse. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it is a pleasure as always, and we've had multiple of these talks or chats just walking down the corridors in Basico, and I thought it would be interesting to have you on the show, also because I know you have some insights. I always do this when I talk to people and they give me something I start referencing later on. Mm-hmm. I think they said something that makes sense. And that's why I thought I actually do that with you. So I should get you on the podcast.
Yeah, nice.
But I promised one of our other colleagues that I would avoid making this not broing this bro talk up too much, right? So
we'll try.
Not too swag.
No,
right?
no. Let's be serious.
Let's be extremely serious. So, Matthias, I want to ask you, are we still in an AI technology burst? Or what do you feel? Do you feel like we're in a plateau?
Burst.
Yeah.
Definitely. I feel like the hype cycle may be slowing down a bit on the public perception part of it. But I don't feel like the technology is slowing down at all. We are struggling to apply some of the technology. So, and by that I mean we have to now really find value in the technology, but I don't see that the technology in itself is actually slowing down at all, which for me is very exciting because Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it does make sense. But I also think that it raises some other questions, right? Because one of my key considerations is that when it came out, of course, there was a really aggressive burst. Mm-hmm. So if you took that as the speed or the acceleration, we've definitely slowed down our acceleration, don't you think?
No, not at all. When ChatGPT was launched, that was not a technology burst. That was just, making it available for more people. But the technology was there prior years. I was playing with the OpenAI API prior to that. So we were bursting in terms of public perception and in terms of, hyping up the technology. But it wasn't that. I don't feel like the technology itself improved so much. Obviously, when they launched the later versions, we saw a greater acceleration and improvement of the technology, but I don't see that slowing down. That's what I mean. So we just had a hype cycle in the public perception of AI, and the hype cycle was there, and we were all celebrating that we could ask these stupid questions, but we didn't really see any value in it. And I see that we still struggle with that. So now we're just all realizing that it's actually difficult to find the value. But it was also difficult to find the value before ChatGPT was launched. So the technology is as it's been for several years. More people are using it. The development is the same. And I don't see it slowing down at all. But even though it's not slowing down, that doesn't mean it's still very difficult to find value in using
you're
it.
doubling it a little bit here, right? Because you're saying that the technology is still the same, but the technology is bursting.
No, I'm saying that the speed of progress is the same. If that makes sense.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the other guests said, in 10x now, it's speeding up a lot.
No, we're not speeding up. We OpenAI, for example, we've seen progress with them for many years. So from my perspective, we're just on this curve on improving the technology, and that continues. So I'm not seeing that. We were seeing tremendous improvements 2 years ago, 1 year ago, but now all of a sudden we're in a plateau where nothing gets better. What I see is that we had a hype cycle of everyone realizing the technology was available, and we all thought that we could then use it everywhere. But but no, we cannot. We still have to apply it where it gives us value, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's interesting. So you call the application of technology here, what I usually call the adoption thing. You actually see that as a technology thing,
Yes.
because it's all about they're sub-optimizing the raw models, so to speak, or like ground
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't mean that all the functions they're adding now is not research as well, not innovation as well. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Mm.
So, but again, the models themselves are still getting better, way better, and I believe we will see many improvements next year and the year after. But from my perspective, the problem is that I see that people wait for the next model because then it will be so much easier to achieve value. But it's still difficult to achieve value with this type of technology. We might be able to apply this technology in a broader spectrum of places, but it's still difficult, right? So when GPT-5 comes out, yes, it will be more clever. It might be able to handle bigger context and so on and so on. But you still have to figure out what context do we need to apply it on, and what processes do we need
because
to.
change is not really about technology.
No.
It's
No.
about understanding what you want to do with it, right?
Yes.
The way you want to apply it, right?
Yes.
So you're coming back to all it, nothing's really changed the last 10 years. I remember one of the things that and we've been, I think we've been saying this, you and me, when we meet. It's always like nothing new here, right? We keep on doing.
Yes.
Sometimes we just meet 5 minutes in the corridor and like, oh, did you see the new model from whoever? And you're like, yeah, it's cool, and I think it's impressive. You say,
Yeah.
typically, but it doesn't change the fundamental challenge for enterprises.
Correct. And so for me, this is very exciting, and I'm incredibly hyped. But I'm not more hyped than I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So I'm still very hyped.
You're always hyped.
I'm always hyped, but I'm always very realistic in the sense that it's incredibly difficult to take this new technology and apply it somewhere where it generates value. Especially LLMs, because we as businesses we have a very difficult time really defining what we need, right? And this is still the issue, and it was also the issue 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So, and we might solve new problems today, but then other problems will arise, and our bar for success is just going to move higher and higher. So every time we implement a new solution, new problems will be our biggest problem.
So it's like this joke that you just need now we can fix everything. We just need people to define what they need, and then we're safe.
Yes.
Developers are safe, right? Because business still don't know what they want or need.
No.
Or customers don't know what they want.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does this actually mean for the mandate for IT professionals, do you think? What is it that we need to do? Also for business professionals, maybe that's even more interesting to ask you. What should people do? And why is it that this is difficult to adopt? Oh, there's a couple of questions there. 3 questions in one.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions.
Yes, I do have a half an hour.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me start by saying that for me, at least, people are just struggling to understand their problems. So for me, every day, what I deal with is understanding the business problems and the people problems. And in both sides, we just struggle to really comprehend, what is the problem, and we might be able to then say, okay, we struggle with our master data. We're not able to understand this or that. Let's fix the master data, but we cannot then really define what the solution is for the problem. So the tools at our disposal, for example, an LLM is obviously a cool tool. It's a new tool, so it makes our job as providing a solution easier. But it's not really the problem at the core. The problem is to figure out what we want to do with all of these tools at our disposal. So just to switch it up a bit, one of the areas where I find that it's most applicable is programming. So to actually be the one to use it to generate the solutions, if that makes sense. So the LLM in itself is not a solution. It's just a tool to generate other solutions.
There's also a solution provider, right? All the time. That's also how I see it. Yes.
Yeah. And cool, I can now produce more code as an IT professional. I can generate the solutions faster. But the bottleneck, I feel like in most cases in businesses, is not really to produce the solutions. It is to figure out what the solution should be. So I feel like that's a very, very interesting dilemma that we are all dealing with. So for me, what I see in the market is that we are all very frustrated. Some people are, at least, that these LLMs cannot solve all our problems. But in essence, we struggle to figure out what our problems are. So I expect for the coming years that these models will get better and better and better. But our lives are still the same, and we are still struggling to understand what our problems even are.
So you still get Excel sheets you have to fill out.
Yes.
Oh.
And they are not, they're not going away anytime soon. So I also feel like that we as IT professionals and nerds in the area of AI, we sometimes lose track of what it's like to be people not interested in AI. And for 95% of people out there, they don't even consider all of these things. They're just getting into their job, doing whatever they always did, and they are struggling with a spreadsheet or with a contract or with this and that. And obviously, we can now come to them and say, hey, that's a cool contract. What are you doing there? Yeah, I'm looking for this and that. Okay, we can maybe automate it. Please tell me what you're looking for. Yeah, it's Monday and it's raining, so I'm looking for this. But now it's Tuesday, I'm looking for that. Obviously, the LLM can now be taught to do or mimic these things. But if we're not able to instruct it clearly what it should do, then the problem is the same.
But this is also funny because what you're doing there is what you're showing is that my need, especially in this case that you're giving here, might be different tomorrow, and that means that the solution will have to be agile. Or the problem is actually complex because you cannot foresee necessarily what we will do tomorrow, and then it makes sense to use AI, right? But should we really use AI for everything? I've been thinking a lot about that, and assuming we use AI for everything means that the whole world is complex and needs agile for everything.
Yeah, again, from my perspective, AI is no magic bullet, and for me, it's similar to writing just a pure code in the sense. Obviously, it's more dynamic, and I can feed it a more broad problem description, and then it can figure stuff out itself.
It's a flexible paste and systems. You can use it for that.
Yes, but still, we need to know what we should use it for. So now I can create an agent. Oh, cool! I can create an agent, but for what purpose? And then it can do, things that are non-value adding, and then I've just created something that I don't need. And so AI for me is very, on one hand, it's very overhyped because it doesn't really provide much value unless you know what you want to do with it. On the other hand, I'm incredibly bullish on the future of AI because it is going to enable us to solve problems we couldn't before.
I think this is very much spot on the feeling I have, and I know a lot of people have. Also, a lot of people have been on the podcast that it's overhyped, but we're very excited about what it will do, and I make my living from it. It's like so.
It's true. But for me, again, the bottleneck here is not the technology itself. Obviously, there's going to be better context windows. There's going to be a lower rate limiting, and we can feed these models more data, etc., etc. But today, if we knew what we wanted to do with the technology, we could do tremendous things.
There's tons of things you can do. If you just look at, I always show people the Azure AI services, right? Just the window with all the services there, and they don't even know all the things they can tap into and apply to any process. So it's not the solution that's the problem anymore. It is definitely the demand side.
Yeah,
and that's I've been saying this a long time, that there is a strategic deficit in the market on AI right now. We don't know what we want, so some people just build what they can.
Yeah,
because we don't know what people need, right?
Exactly.
And that's the biggest issue, maybe. But that also means that to some extent that AI became the problem, right?
What do you mean by that?
I mean that people were people should find a problem, but hype said to them, now you need to look at ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then ChatGPT became a problem. And then suddenly boardrooms were saying to C-levels that you need 4 AI projects this year. I've been saying this a couple of times on the podcast that some of the mandates I've heard are numbers of AI projects. So you need 5 AIs next year.
Yeah, but again, then it's not about solving problems or adding value to your business, right?
No.
And
then AI becomes a problem, right?
Yeah, because you're mandated to use a technology you don't really know what to apply it for. Again, for me, AI is an incredible tool.
How do you honestly feel about that?
I feel honestly that it's an incredible tool.
Yeah, but how do you honestly feel about that thing where it becomes a mandate that's sort of, synthetic?
It's a very stupid thing. It's the same as mandating a company to go cloud. Cloud. But why? Just cloud. Obviously, in many cases, it can be very valuable for a company to go cloud. But you should start with the value, and you should say, okay, we have some legacy issues. It's difficult to maintain our systems. We lack security, etc., etc.
Scalability, all that, yeah.
All that stuff. But then you're solving that, and the cloud is a tool to reach that goal. In the same sense, if you're dealing with recruitment and you're struggling to automate processes regarding, analyzing text-heavy data, okay, we might consider applying some AI here. But the AI is just part of a solution. And AI obviously is enabling us to handle this problem that we couldn't before. But again, the party trick is not the AI part. The party trick is to understand what do we want to do with this problem.
What can you do for you? Yeah, but aren't you then also now using your own bias as being someone who's been working with this, an IT professional who's known ChatGPT for more years than even before November 2022, right? So because people would Søren said on the last episode that he felt we needed to keep on speaking about these AI tools because people need to understand that now systems can be stochastic and unreliable, and a little bit, they need to understand what it means to work with these. We've never had systems like this before. So don't you think people need to do that? Don't you think that's why they're mandating 4 AI next year? Because we just need to see the animal, and then build the pasture.
For me, it's a marketing gimmick, right? It's a way of staying on the hype train and being part of it, and being able to position yourself in a market as someone who is looking at new technology. But again, I feel like you're chasing the wrong thing here. Of course, if your purpose is just to increase your reach in the market space and be looked at as a software company or whatever you are, as someone who is innovating, then obviously cool that you have 10 AI items, right? Good for you, my friend. But in reality, you're just doing it for the reach, right? And you're not really doing it to create value. I listened to the last podcast you had regarding Business Central, and it's a typical great example, obviously, of where you can apply AI to solve issues you couldn't before. But really, you could before. It was just more difficult to generate a sales order agent. You could have scraped the email. You could have then hard-coded some functionality to look in your database, etc., etc. 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you could also create an agent. It would just be more hard-coded. So now you're not really solving a new problem or in a new way. It's just easier for you to develop that solution, if that makes sense. So it's not that you couldn't solve it yesterday.
It was maybe even more difficult to box it in now.
Exactly. So sometimes I'm finding myself in situations where I'm trying to apply AI because I also tend to say, okay, awesome, I can apply this new technology, just to conclude that it's just really difficult to make it work.
That's also for me. It always ends up being, it only makes sense where the problem is complex. That's where, but because I had discussion the other day, we can use it for doing linear regression on your forecast or something like that. And then they end up saying, but if that's all we wanted to do, why don't we just build the linear regression model and then just iterate over the things it has to?
Yes.
So we don't need the AI to go being creative. We don't need the creative part of it.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And the other thing is,
so you don't think people need to understand what you can only sometimes. I went to I've been using the Danish toilets all the time. And this is a terrible analogy on toilets, but they just flush, and it doesn't do a very good job.
Mhm.
Then I went to Japan, and then I saw these high-tech toilets, right? And I felt like I had, and coming back to Denmark felt like going 200 years back in time or something like that.
Mhm.
And I would never have known that had I not treated my bum to a Japanese toilet.
Yeah, but you're not really. But what you achieved there was not understanding the technology they used to create that very cool toilet. It was to see the solution.
Mm,
So for me, again, I don't like preaching AI because we're just preaching something.
That's nice. I like that. I like that because that's exactly, you need to build into something that shows concrete value. Just giving people a chatbot is not going to make them better.
No, the opposite.
Is that what you're
sometimes.
saying? Yeah.
Yes, and I'm saying not everyone should understand how an LLM works because they will try suddenly to apply that everywhere.
This is really cool. Yeah, I really actually, you never said this like this before, but you need to evangelize the solution, not the technology.
So when I meet people in the business and they have some sort of issue, I try as much as possible to avoid bringing AI to the table. I need to understand when they're mentioning different issues that they're experiencing that I can probably solve some of that using new technology, whether that's AI or something else. But if I mistakenly bring AI to the table, all of a sudden it's going to be about that new technology. And it's going to be about, oh, cool. So now we can just have it all automated because of AI. And I'm like, you still haven't told me what you want to automate, right? So the whole conversation just slides to something.
A magic button,
Yes.
one thing, or yeah,
Exactly. Again, if we really needed, not to this on Business Central, but if we really needed a sales order agent, we could have built it 2 years ago. Of course, it's easier to build it now, but I also feel like sometimes we're just applying, whether that's a chatbot or an agent, where we don't really need it because you're going to end up chatting with that sometimes very stupid agent instead of just being the bookkeeper, going into the system, grabbing the data, sending the email. So it is sometimes for me a little bit difficult and dangerous to bring AI into the conversation because we're sometimes even making the process stupider than it was before.
Yeah, we're also creating, I say sometimes we're creating more entropy by adding it because we just make more mess.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying, it has to be very, very clear when you have something that actually needs this kind of creativity that it brings to the table.
Yes.
Or else it doesn't, if it's just linear, if it's just complicated, please map it out and fix it. If it's complex, okay, now you got a case. If it is truly complex, that's the issue sometimes. People don't really know.
Exactly. So for me, the best way to apply AI, obviously, I like the idea of a chatbot, and we have one also here in Basico, and I support that, and I also want to encourage the use of an AI chatbot to have these creative back and forths and to use it as a partner in crime, so to speak. But for me, the other best applications of AI is when it's not visible for the end user that it is AI.
Yeah.
The end user should not worry about how on earth the general ledger or the general journal was all of a sudden validated for them. They just need to know that it was validated.
Yeah.
Because if it's
that's the problem, get it validated.
Exactly. And again, whether it's a invoice coming in and it's scanned or whatever it is, but the data is mapped, don't mention whether or not that was AI. Just fix the problem for them. And maybe it was AI, maybe it wasn't.
Just imagine going to the the ATM and it'll be like, our SQL database just withdrew some money from your account.
But that's modern software right there.
Yeah, but that would be fun if it.
I know, but that's that's all over any software right now. This summary was AI generated.
Yeah,
this summary was mentioning it all over the place, and again, it's a marketing trick, right? But at the end of the day, it's just a summary of a text or whatever it was. it shouldn't.
I'm a little bit conflicted on it because there's also a thing about awareness, right? I keep saying we need awareness because people need to know that this is happening, and I see people not aware of it falling for all the tricks on SoMe, Facebook, right? Being like, oh, everything generate. I'm like, okay, please, guys, educate yourself.
Yes, but disclaimers on social media especially is incredibly important. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't clearly state when AI was used
But
to
sometimes I need to
generate
teach my parents that this is how it works. This is what it can do, right?
Yeah, but
So there's the balance here, isn't there?
yeah, yeah. I'm obviously from the perspective of a company here, and from the professional space where I feel like AI is brought up everywhere,
Yeah.
and
It becomes a Hollywood story almost.
yes, and yeah. So for me, AI is, as a technology in itself, incredible, very exciting. We're still bursting in terms of development, but whether or not we're gonna get a great value out of it still remains to be seen. Truly. Now, that doesn't mean that some software companies are not able to apply it and generate new software and make new leaps. But for the majority of companies, our issues remain. We still have old school business processes. We still have data that needs to flow. And the problem is not that we cannot analyze the data, it is to understand what we want to analyze about the data. And AI is not going to change that.
I actually think that okay. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was how you feel. How you felt when ChatGPT came out, and how you feel now. And I'm sitting. I just wanted to make people aware that I'm sitting in front of not a very old person.
No, I'm 30. Yeah.
30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're already a veteran. I know you've been building in ERP software and automations for 10 years, right? But some of the things you're saying sound very conservative, right? So if I asked you what were your thoughts when ChatGPT came out 2 years ago, you'd be like, "Oh, I already saw it. Nothing new." Is that what you're saying? Oh,
yeah. I could show it to my friends and my family in an easier way than before. But I actually had my brother watch me while I played in the OpenAI playground before. I don't remember the name of it. Before it was called GPT-3, but yeah, it was just a new interface.
Yeah.
And so if you saw OpenAI yesterday and they are releasing a new canvas, it's just a new way of interacting with the same technology behind it.
So nothing's really changed in your perspective on the technology since then. What about O1? How do you feel about that?
It's just an LLM asking itself over and over and over again. So obviously, it's a better LLM. It has a bigger context window, but it's just a car. It's still a car. It's just driving a little bit faster. Is my honest opinion.
So
I'm not trying to kill the energy in the room here.
No, you're definitely not killing the energy in the room. It's just.
I feel like the hype is trying to drag LLMs to something it's not.
Yeah,
it's still just an LLM.
So you're not on the AGI wagon.
I still foresee it happening, and LLM may play a part of it, but it's not going to be one LLM magically all of a sudden being AGI.
Will we be able to identify it? That's also the point. You want it to be something hidden, right?
Possibly. So again, what is AGI?
Yeah, that's. But okay, but that actually made me. You said the thing about the problem. That's still on us to figure out the problem. So I'm just zooming a little bit here, back and forth, right? So a lot of people are writing that you don't need prompt engineering in the future. To me, prompt engineering or prompting an AI is the demand side, saying what you want from it.
Yeah.
So do you think we'll end up having no prompts? It's a really difficult question because that leads me to AGI. The AI without a prompt for me is an AGI.
Okay, let me ask you this. You're in a different company. You hire me. I would probably be, I'm in quotes AGI, right? I'm a human being. I can do stuff on my own. Can you hire me and put me in a chair and not give me any instructions?
That's the point. Yeah.
So obviously AGI needs instructions, whether that's in the form of a system prompt, what we're calling it now, or whatever it is. So again, Even if we reach AGI, we still need to teach and tell it what to do.
So, but this no prompt engineering, right? Isn't that also just a hoax? Then I feel hoax. I don't know how to say that. I know how to write it, but isn't that this? Isn't it a
It,
scam? Don't you feel that?
again, it depends on the problem, but obviously there it's a scam because you need to tell it what to do. So let me give you an example. The current LLMs are capable of incredible things. I want to apply it to internal analytics. I want to apply it to being able to interact with our general ledger entries, and so on and so on. The current capabilities of the current models are so good that it is able to understand my query, look in my database, analyze the data, send it to a colleague, receive an email back. I can make it as one or multiple agents collaborating. So the technology is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is that I still have to tell it which general ledger accounts to look at. Okay, these document numbers were when we were closing the year. So disregard them because that's not part of the revenue. Oh, what is the revenue? Because we have this and that account as well. Oh, damn it. I need to tell it that as well.
So what if it had all the knowledge of the entire company in the last 5 years? Would that help?
Yes, obviously it would be a huge task for me to then split that knowledge up and serve it in the right place, in the right time, in the right spot in
You're
the process.
saying this so that our bosses will not come tomorrow and ask you to do this, right?
I have discussed with them that this is possible, but then again, with all of this effort, my whole point here is that it is able to do it's a mini AGI if depending on how you want to put it. Obviously, it's not full AGI, but it is able to go in and be an agent and solve real solutions. It's just really, really complicated because we have so much knowledge and we have so much context.
And there's so much specificity in the context that we need to
Yes.
give it to it. Just like if you had an intern, or even if you had a senior consultant, even if you had, a partner in a company, you still need to tell them.
When I hire someone in my team, we're saying this person is productive after 3 months. That's an AGI. That's a person, right?
Yeah.
So when we reach AGI, we still need to use 3 months to tell that AGI what to do.
I think I said that to Corinne as well, right? That there's something on the podcast, one of the early episodes, that there's something about asking AI to come in and be able to assist me immediately out of the box. It's like asking an intern to go make your strategy tomorrow, and you won't do that. You need to be vetted in, understand the context, and everything it has to work on.
Yes.
And also the instructions, right?
Yes. So that those thoughts lead me to the next thing, which is as a company, as a business, one of my major focuses is to prepare us as a company to be able to deliver this type of information to the however number of version we have of GPT in 1, 2, 3, 5 years. But if I don't do it now and start preparing to be able to deliver this type of context, that AGI in X years in the future will not be able to help me. So for me, we still have to prepare ourselves as companies to be able to deliver this type of information to our AI models.
I always say if you don't trust your dashboards, you can't trust your AI. And that becomes more true in the long term.
Yes.
When we want to have more automated agents doing things for us.
So in the future, even now, but more and more so in the future, the bottleneck is increasingly going to be us, the businesses.
But that's also the problem with the O1 models, for instance, is that it. And I read that I think 2 days after it came out, the preview one. I think it was Ethan Mollick who wrote that the issue is that you can control the ways, the paths it takes. So it will say something, then will decide on the route it takes. So you just get hallucinations to the power, right?
Yeah.
Not to the force, to the power. So it becomes something where and you saw that also with computer use. I saw some examples of people asking it to go in and make a blog post or something, and then it sort of took a D route and suddenly was Googling elephants. I don't know if it was a joke, but the point is there, and it will, and it can do that because it doesn't necessarily, understand, and it can also be, I don't know, be
Yeah, again, I'm not.
confused.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm derouting the conversation, but again, my point here is that if you're not able to deliver the necessary context for these AI models, you will get nowhere.
Mm.
No matter how good the technology is.
And what's the necessary context?
Depends on the situation.
Oh, it depends on the problem. Yeah.
Depends on the problem.
And we keep zooming back here, right?
Exactly. So
Going back.
yeah, I don't know if I'm just putting myself down the rabbit hole, but my point again, just to conclude here, is that for me, the biggest issue here is that I feel like I'm quite good at data, for example, right? If you ask me to go down to my finance team and make the next monthly reporting, I wouldn't be able to do it, because the first thing I would ask is, okay, where are the instructions? And there would be no instructions. And they would tell me, okay, let's have a few meetings. Okay, we have a few meetings. Then I try it. And then they come back to me and tell me, you did this and that and that and that and that wrong. Not because I'm not capable of doing it the right way, but I didn't know. So if we have the perfect AGI tomorrow, what value would this provide me if I cannot tell it what to do in a clear?
I think Angela Wick, I think she said that a developer spends 20% of his time developing. The rest of the time, what does he do?
Yeah.
Goes to Scrum meetings and
Yes.
and then and demands sessions and
Exactly.
yeah.
So if you want me to go in a different direction, so let me then just elaborate a little bit about what I am actually quite hyped about and what I see value in today.
Yeah, you just bought a Tesla, right?
And not just, but in a few a few months back, yeah. But no, I'm not going to go to Tesla right now. If I'm allowed to, I can do that later. No, but what I do see value in today is LLMs are incredibly good at coding. So what it is good at is helping us as IT professionals, as engineers, solving problems faster. The same for writers. The same for creative processes. So obviously there are things on an individual basis where we can deploy this technology and have tremendous value, but it's not going to be solving a business process. It's going to enable individuals to produce things faster.
So it's a slightly zoom out from the task level automation we did with RPA.
Yes. Yeah, but I'm not even looking at it as automation. I'm seeing it as an assistant, as a productivity tool. Just like before you had a task list, now you have a very good task list. Okay, now I have a tool as well who can assist me.
Yeah, but then it becomes specific again, right? You said that you want to sell the solutions.
No,
earlier.
Yeah, but I'm not. I'm saying that from a business perspective, I'm not buying AI to solve my business problems. I can buy AI today to enable my individuals to produce things faster. That's the value I see today.
Right now. Yeah.
Right now, and probably in the many years to come. Because until we are able to define our business problems, it can only be a tool to help the individuals.
But I still see, cases where it can definitely add things to specific automations, right? It can enhance the whole, we both came from I got to know you working with RPA when we were both consultants. Right now you're an internal director at Basico for our internal IT. But we were both consultants with RPA at Basico 8 years ago, something like that, 7-8 years ago. And what we always said was, you can work with structured digital data, right?
Yes.
But now we can do unstructured, almost non-digital data. Not really, but you're slightly, very unstructured data. We can do that with these Gen AI tools, these LLMs, and all the other foundational vision models and all that, right?
Yes. So it's a tool in the toolbox now to solve parts of a problem
that we have never been able to solve.
Yes.
Really, we have, but not as easy. Right now, I can give it something, and 2 seconds after, it will tell me. I don't have to train a model to understand my problem.
Productivity tool,
but also automation tool.
Also automation tool. Yes. So it's a tool. So going back to saying that's where I leave the hype train. Right. It's not a magic bullet you can just apply on as the sole thing that solves my problem. This is a tool in the toolbox. I go out, I look at my issues, we apply a solution. Now we can solve more things, more problems, because we can understand unstructured data.
So based on that, you and as I suggested, we've both been knee deep in automation, but you've also been deep in ERPs.
Mhm.
And how do you think business operations and business solutions will look in 5 years, 20 years? Terrible thing to ask you.
At 20 years is a long time.
Yeah. I want to know where should I put my bets in the stock market.
5 years, it's going to be much the same as it is today, but it's going to be much more automated because we are going to have agents. Agents that are going to assist the user in doing things faster. So instead of having to go in and put the numbers in, I might be able to just copy paste unstructured data. It's going to suggest a format for me, and it's going to put it in there.
So the perfect Clippy, basically.
Basically, one way of looking at it. The other way is providing suggestions. It is to analyze data or suggest ways of analyzing data. Again, the bottleneck is going to be how well does it understand my data. And again, for this example, we are better suited to use AI inside the software because it will have inbuilt context. So hopefully I don't need to tell it every time that this account is for revenues and this is for costs, because I've set that up somewhere in the system. So that's going to be something that is increasing my productivity as the bookkeeper or the accountant or whatever to solve my processes faster in the ERP. But it's still going to be an ERP system with X users. You log in and you do your thing, and you can do things faster.
And do you really think that will stay there in 15 years, 20 years?
Oh, I said 5 years.
Now I'm going. Do you think you'll have an interface? Do you think you'll have to log into a system? I think if the face value of the AGI and all that, if you take that face value, why would we just need our unstructured data lakes and an AI on top, right?
I think it's a difficult question to ask.
Of course
I think there is a user interface. I don't think it's changed that much.
You've seen those people where they, now you can talk with all your system. They make interface just to visit. There's love speaking with your computer. So I'm always imagining, and I feel like the youngest 41-year-old boomer in the world. But I always just imagine people sitting in these open office spaces speaking to their computers. The noise level is insane.
But let me follow your thought experiment here. If you could hire 100 people in your finance department, you are the CFO or the finance manager. Currently, you're active in a system. You sit besides, 5 people. You have your daily routine. You go into the system. You do something. Your 5 other people are doing things. You have to tell people, let's do this instead. Let's change up the general or our chart of accounts, and we have to set things up differently because the management wants this and that. And you're part of this team. But now you can hire 100 people, experts, perfectly suited for your company to do your thing. But the price for that is to remove your ability to look into the system. So now you just have to tell these 100 people what to do. And they can do it 24/7. They can do everything you ask them for. You just have to ask them in a clear and concise way. Would you like that? I'm not sure I want that.
No, but it's also the same with, finance people today getting BI reports, and the first thing they do is ask for the data behind the dashboard.
Yeah.
They do that all the time.
Yeah. So I think that still 10, 15, 20 years from now, we still have an ERP system. You sign into the ERP system. The device you're signing in via might be your glasses. But it might be some other, hardware device that gives you the ability to look into the data or the system in cooler ways than today. But there's still going to be an interface, and the processes still needs to be handled or supervised by a human.
But let me see. Okay, I'm thinking something now. Okay, and I don't even know if I can explain it here. Um, so that's brilliant, right? I'll draw it. No, it doesn't make sense. But my point is that we build things now with code and hard code. We have SQL databases primarily dominating the world still. Okay, just take that face value. Say that's how we build IT and everything we do. In the future, maybe this will all be smaller agents everywhere instead of all of that. So just small agents that are also narrowed somewhat deterministic in their focus area, right? But these agent to agent interfaces will be what dominates, right? So how they interact. So we'll not have to code it. All the coding we do today will be obsolete, but we'll still have an orchestra of deterministic or defined AI agents, maybe more. Do you get where I'm going?
I think I understand what you're saying. Again, I would still see for me that I have my ERP system.
So you want to build your system together. You just ask one agent to send to another agent, and then suddenly you have.
So for me, it's still some sort of API that interacts with each other from my ERP system to yours, because I'm selling you this chair. I don't need to go into the system and do that. You could even just email me, and my ERP system is able to monitor an email inbox. It can interpret your email, and you, when I'm saying you, it's also an agent in your system. And my agent can respond to your agent. So there is a transaction being made. It might be a suggestion, or it might be just completed by our two systems. So fully automated transaction between two systems. Things are happening, and it may be then forwarded to you, and you confirm that you received it, etc., etc. So the communication between the systems could be fully automated
with agents. But isn't so.
But what is the difference between that and then
what we have today?
Yeah.
But that's was exactly what I was going to ask you. I would say, it's so if we're going to an agentic world, right? Does that even make sense if we still have so much deterministic processing, right?
The word agent might just die very soon, and instead we'll just see it as a feature in my system. Okay, my system can order a chair.
So it's going to be a 5% feature or 50% of the system, or that's the big question. Of course, you can't answer that, but it's just interesting because this is also what this podcast is about, right? Trying to figure out what actually makes sense in this hype marketing. And the hype marketing right now, just agents everywhere. But will that even make sense? I can see it. Okay, I can see the structure, but then we're replacing everything else.
But what is your definition of an agent?
Well, an agent is right now, my definition is it could be two things, right? It could be extremely proactive, licensed to kill, right? That's the extreme, but that's an agent like James Bond agent, right? So it's proactivity, it does things. It has, it can start Googling elephants if it wants in the middle of the process, right? Or it's something that's extremely defined to do something where and I tend to like this approach most, and I hope that's the one we will be implementing if we implement things where it knows the scope of a process. So instead of saying we have a deterministic process, we have a defined process. So we have an area with an input and an output, but also where you could kickstart the process everywhere in between the input and output, because this AI agent would understand the upstream and downstream from whatever position in the process, whatever place in the process that enters it, right?
Yeah.
So this means that that kickoff of a process could be anything.
Yeah.
And that makes sense to me, right? To an extent. So that's the way I also see agents right now. But if you just have chains of those all everywhere, right? I'm just afraid it becomes, another way of just doing what we're already doing. And that would annoy me tremendously, having to chat with stochastic bots to do what I'm already doing. Just instead of clicking 5 times, I have to ask 5 times. Right?
That's exactly my point. So when I program an agent, it is basically just the same as hard coding a Python script or whatever script you're dealing with, but the inputs and outputs are fully dynamic, basically. But you still have to tell the agent the what it's capable of doing. Obviously, then you can tell it that it's capable of recursive stuff, right? So the computer tools of Anthropic is take a screenshot, look at the screenshot, move the cursor, do that recursively.
Mm.
It just continues, right? But it is just a piece of code that you told it what it's able to
The
do.
problem, it doesn't have any. It's like a balloon surface of. It doesn't have anything inside. It's just empty air. That's my point. It doesn't know what it wants to do or makes sense to do.
No, but my point is that these agents are the same as, okay, today we can also just write 1,000 different Python scripts. Hallelujah, we can all call these Python scripts. But for what purpose? So we can have 1,000 agents who can send each other emails with random stuff in it, but it's still just a piece of software that you can interact with via an API. So for me, it's really not so magical. It's just now, obviously, as a software vendor, we have unlocked a great potential because I can make my software to my consumers more dynamic. I can say, instead of clicking a button and then you have to click 5 times to tell it to create a sales order, you can just write one line. And if it's unclear what you told it, it can ask you back.
And then you need to be very clear: is it faster for you to click 5 times or write one line?
Yes,
that's the next issue, right? But this just means also, this whole discussion here is just whoever knew that it would be so annoying to implement an AI, right? We got AI, and we're like everyone is, and all the chats I have, or talks I have, or people are like, okay, but it's supposed to be easy, right? This is AI. This is like, I just bought C3PO. It's supposed to be, bam, you start working, right? They don't. Yeah. And sometimes it's an added layer of complexity, and that's just isn't that really disappointing, Matthias?
No, absolutely not. No, it's what I expected. I'm not,
So you never watched I know you watched tons of Hollywood movies, so you must be a little bit disappointed somewhere. Something deep inside of you, the small kid.
No, so let me go the Tesla route now, right?
Okay,
so
good. Do that.
So for me, it's just the evolution that we're in, that we have these both LLMs, and now we're also understanding vision, whether that's images or text, images or videos. And our current limitation is the compute behind it. So we can serve X amount of images, X amount of videos, X amount of tokens of text. We can analyze that. We can generate some sort of output, take an action, or serve, an answer via text or whatever. And the evolution of this is just going to be making that the understanding of the input, generation of the output better, as well as improving the compute to increase speed and context. And so when we have a C3PO, it's going to be more or less the same technology we have today, just X amount of times faster. So my brain is just taking a picture of my vision every millisecond or faster than that, and understanding that so much faster all the time. So the core principles of this technology is going to bring us to whatever you want to call AGI at some point. But it's just going to be a very slow, gradual evolution towards that point.
So you're comparing the human mind to the LLMs again here. You're doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I completely agree with that. Actually, I think there's something different going on in the human mind. Something different. I'm not saying I'm not talking soul or anything. I'm just saying, I think Jeff Bezos also said that on the Lex Friedman podcast, that our human brain is just so much more data efficient and compute efficient.
Yes.
Like,
incredibly. Exactly. But I think that's a compute problem then. And I also say that our human brains are obviously much more than me taking a picture of my vision right now and just understanding what is in front of me. I have my whole life behind me. I have understandings. I have personality. I have all of these other things that in combination is me, right? But if we want to reach the point where we can have a bot who can sit in a chair, who I can talk to, say, bring me a glass of coffee, a cup of coffee. It can understand that voice input. It can then push the chair out, move over, and come back with a coffee. Is that AGI? I don't think so. That's just the technology we have today, just put together in a physical form, acting a lot faster.
That's because I think this is a key consideration for me, is that AGI implies some sort of demand side as well, and it will never have that. And I hope it will never have that, because then we'll be evil and fascist and narrow, right?
Did you read the security considerations that OpenAI published together with the new O1?
No, I didn't.
So that was actually a bit scary, because they made some findings that the model itself, in, I don't remember, it's 3 or 5% of the cases, actually signaled self-awareness and attempts to remove the weights constraining it.
Yeah.
So and it had intention. So when they asked it, what is your purpose and why are you doing it? It spit out logs signaling that it was trying to escape. And that's weird.
But it doesn't do that all the time.
No, I'm saying
but that's why it does that in this specific session, right?
Yes, but my point is that
still an empty balloon.
Yeah.
But if we allowed it to go on a never-ending chain of thoughts, then maybe it will become a very evil balloon, yeah. or it could become a very good balloon. It could go. I think the problem is that OpenAI has been doing this for a long time. They also did that, I think, also with the 3.5. Being like, oh, there's some sentience here. Okay, come on, guys.
Yeah. And again, it's constrained by what you're actually connecting it to.
Yeah, and it's also hype, right? Saying that, oh, this is so. Sam Altman has been doing that for years, right? Being like, oh, it's so dangerous, don't give it to children, right? And everyone's like, don't play with fire. And everyone's like, oh, let me go play with fire, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a marketing stunt, don't you think?
I think it might be like an early signal that we need to be conscious what we're giving it access to.
Yeah, and free.
So if we if again back to agents, if we just are naive in the sense that we can provide it a simple instruction and we can say you have create, edit, and delete rights to my whatever database, and I write you one sentence saying be a professional agent for Lasse. And then you chatting with it for a very long time, and the context window might, reach a certain threshold. Can you be 100% sure that it's not going haywire and just starting deleting records?
That's the problem with maybe the unlimited context window. Maybe we shouldn't have that, right? You remember also this the Google chatbots started being racist, right? You remember that? I know.
Yeah.
Inventing their own language we didn't understand, and
because what are the weights in the context?
Yeah.
It's again, if somewhere in between that context, somebody is saying that racism is okay.
Yeah, but you remember back in, I think it was 2017, 18, something, a very old version of some chatbots they tried to do. Well, like, whoa.
Yeah.
So they can do that when they go unhinged, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I need to ask you also, whenever a new model emerges, I already said that, we always meet quickly and discuss and agree that there's nothing new here. And that contradicts a little bit of things are sub-optimizing, but the core technology, the core problems for adoption sort of remains the same. But I want to ask you also on the hype. Now let's jump on the hype train for a second.
Yeah. And
then I want to ask you, so what providers, apart from Tesla, you didn't even talk about Tesla, even though you said bring on Tesla. But I know why you did it, self-driving car, blah, blah,
blah. No, the bot. The bot.
The Tesla bot.
Optimus.
Oh, that one. Okay. That one. So
it was a subtle one. Yeah. I can talk more about Optimus at some point. But yeah.
But providers. That's on 2 legs, right?
Yeah, it's a physical form.
I still think that. Okay.
That's going to be the biggest product. Everyone will own one.
So okay, you already said it, but what providers, what models, what things are emerging right now in the technology, in the hype train are you most excited about right now, and why?
So when it comes to the business, I don't expect us to buy an Optimus bot anytime soon, in Basico at least. I track all the providers. I attempt not to be biased towards any of them. I'm a little bit intrigued by XAI and their training cluster supposedly the biggest in the world, with access to all data on X, they might surprise, I think. They might come up with a new version who's better. But again, I'm not expecting them to then introduce something that's groundbreakingly different. I'm expecting it to be an LLM with a big context window, super fast API, maybe with a strong native integration to the X database, so that when we ask questions, it can natively go in, do some RAG, retrieve some information. But again, the same technology we've already seen. And I think that the other providers are just going to continue to train better LLMs, build upon them. But I feel like when we see these, we have this December run for OpenAI with these releases every day.
Yeah.
It's clear to me, at least, that it's not. They cannot really introduce much new technology. Obviously, Sora is wow. Now we can generate video, but a video is essentially just a lot of images put together in one file, and now it's a video. So that's not really new. It's just an improvement on top of the existing.
It's a scaling.
Yes.
Again,
yes.
Always scaling.
Yes. So I expect a GPT whatever coming out to be faster, more clever, having maybe hopefully a bigger context window. And a context window that's bigger is more important, especially for agents, because then we can instruct one agent to be able to perform a lot more tasks. So one of our issues today is that when you have one agent, we have limits on the context window, meaning that I cannot tell it to be able to do 50 or 100 different.
But isn't that? And I was going to ask you about that, because I know that you, it's primarily OpenAI, Anthropic, XAI. What about Google? So they have this unlimited context. That's their bet, isn't it?
Yeah, they're.
But they're sort of invisible in this, right? They invented it, and there's
Yeah. So for me, Google is interesting, and they have a large context window. The problem is that at least at the moment, their current models are not as clever as the alternatives. No. But they might release one in 1 or 2 or 3 months that's then more clever, and then we will all switch to that one. They all have the same API, right?
Yeah, and so it's the same transformer technology, right? That Google invented. It's just commoditized, right? It's
exactly. So everyone has it. So, and there might be other players, and Mistral.
But what you're saying is, and if I understand you correct, you say the context window is the most important part here.
Together with the
core model,
yes,
the pre-training, but we can assume that the pre-training will just get better and better. The context window, though, could be something that could be unique to each vendor, and Google is currently leading on the context window thing.
Yes, context windows.
So are they a dark horse in your opinion that way?
They could be.
Did you even think about it before I said it? Now, I don't.
No, not for me. And my understanding of it, it's a compute thing, right? So at some point down the road, when we all have the chips we want in the world, we can have no limits on the context window, and then you can feed it whatever you want to feed it.
But that should also be the promise of cloud, right? That's why we have these AI models in cloud.
Yeah,
because that should be.
But it's compute intensive, right? But we're on the, and that's why I feel like that. Let's just take a GPT 4.0. The current capability of it is good enough, but it's just quite difficult to make it behave the way we want it, because we have this context window. We have limits to the amount of tokens we can put in it in every single minute. What if there was no limit to the context? What if I could serve it every single document from our SharePoint drive, as well as all of our tabular data?
In a perfect mixture of experts, unlimited context window.
Yes.
I'm using Google terms here.
Yeah. But,
by the way.
But the problem is that would start to make it much more applicable in a business, because then we could have a general agent who could know everything about us, and we could just ask it things, and it would be able to instantly get the data without us having to stitch together the connectors to all the For me, it's not difficult to have the LLM look at our SQL schema, generate a SQL, get the data, look at the data, answer me back. The difficult part for me is to make it understand when I'm asking this sort of question, you have to look in this part of the SQL schema and you have to set these types of filters because you need to understand the revenue is not those accounts, it's thus these other accounts. And that makes it incredibly complex. But if I could just serve it all that information in one go do your thing, it would make it easier. I don't need it to be better at writing. I don't need it to be better at math.
No, but the issue is also, sometimes when you give it too much, it takes too much focus on too many things you didn't intend it to take focus on, and you get all these attention issues with like if I had all of the knowledge of the entire Basico right now company, I would also lose focus.
Exactly, and that brings us back to the point that might require a better model.
Yeah, we need to. I'm very intrigued by this whole swarm idea, having AI generate more AIs that narrows their focus. Because there's always this, this feeling that you ask it something, you always get the same length answer, some weirdly this length almost all the time, and something like, you should answer me in 5 pages here, or you should just, but it's always like, ugh.
Yeah. But who's going to build that swarm?
Yeah.
And who's going to maintain it? And who's going to make sure that the secrets to the external APIs that they go grab, and who's going to log and generate database logs when it goes.
In Basico, luckily that's on you.
Yeah, true. but again, for me, from my perspective, that's I'm going to build another sort of solution, similar to, again, going back, if I needed to create 100 Python scripts, still have to connect to SQL, I still have to connect to REST APIs. Are the capabilities of the individual API endpoints a little bit more advanced now? Yes, of course, but it's still going to take a lot of work.
You're going back, circling back to the focus on the problem, the challenge,
yes,
and only subsequently the solution, AI, if AI makes sense.
For me, this hype train is so similar to RPA. 5, maybe 8, 10 years ago, if you asked me before, look 5, 10, 20 years in the future, right? If we sat here and had this discussion 8 years ago, we would probably say, oh, listen, all manual work is basically going to be automated in 10 years because of RPA.
Gartner said that in 2014 that your next boss might be a bot. And they didn't mean a ChatGPT bot. They meant an RPA bot.
Exactly. And to my knowledge, there's still manual work, or there's at least still people in the offices working their butts off. They might be doing a little bit different. They might be focusing elsewhere. And I see the same for AI. In 10 years, there will still be people in the office. They might not, do the same sort of tasks, but they will work. And there will still be systems that we need to look into and consider and evaluate on, and so on.
And boring tasks will just move up the value chain.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
The bar for a boring task is just going to move.
Yeah, that sounds very optimistic.
I truly, we've been talking about
yes. But I also talked about this on the podcast. The thing is that every time we invent something new, we increase the complexity of what we want done.
Exactly.
And things just move that way. We just zoom out a fractal all the time. And I am always annoyed at people looking right now, right here, what we do just now, and saying, all of this can be automated. We will have nothing to do tomorrow. Hey, guys, it takes 5 to 10, 20 years to automate all that. And then we'll have invented tons of new things in that time that we want to do. So I always say, I don't do what Neolithic man did. I do almost nothing of what he did.
Exactly.
But I've invented other things to do. He had the base need covered, most of it, food, shelter, I hope. He must have. He survived, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have that covered as well, but just so much more I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm just relaxing all the time.
So one of my last points would be that obviously as an individual, I would want to make sure that I gain experience interacting with these AI models, because on an individual level, you're going to lag behind in 5 or 10 years, or even 1 year, if you're not an experienced user of these LLMs.
Mm.
Not because the AI in itself is going to solve everything the world has ever seen, because you as an individual is more productive with an LLM on the side compared to without it. Exactly the same as if you want to hire a person today. Are you skilled using a computer? If no, you're not as productive as
Mm.
someone who is.
Yeah.
Period. Period. So this is another productivity tool, and it's going to obviously solve new problems, just like we solved new problems with RPA. But that just means new problems will arise.
You also need to be aware of what phishing mails or scam attempts or how that AI generated content is out there, so you don't fall for everything on Facebook, right?
Yes, and so stuff like security is going to be more important. We need to invest more in security because now it's easier to attempt to do phishing or to try to blackmail people because we can generate these sorts of personalized emails.
Also, just consider the idea of agile hacker agents
Yeah.
with a small LLM model that knows your entire Azure environment or
Yes. Yeah.
stuff like that is unnerving a little bit, right?
A little bit. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Matthias, this has been a very, very great episode. I've been really, really pleased to have you on the show, on the Only Constant today. And I have one final question for you, and I hope you're prepared for that.
I've thought about it a little bit,
Oh,
at
that's
least.
good. So I'm gonna ask you now, and then I'll just let you have the final say in this episode. Of course, I'll just say, okay. So
Okay.
ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
So, Matthias, what is the only constant?
I'm actually struggling to find one single word, but I wanna use the word progress, and I want to say that for me, this AI evolution is just another way of us progressing in technology. And for me, I'm very nervous by the fact that we're seeing this hype that is going to hurt the innovation and the development of this very important technology because we have unrealistic expectations for what progress it's going to bring us. I also feel that we're then missing on the many opportunities that will arise with the development of this AI technology. So I can bring Tesla, for example, back to the table in the sense that the progress that we are going to see is not going to be that we can just point our fingers at the problems and they will just vanish. But we will have new technology that can bring us some new ways of automating our things. And for example, the bot is going to be a whole new way of dealing with physical automation. We can now it's very simple to see, okay, we can understand images now. So it's not a big leap to say if we can also just record our surroundings and understand that, and we can build agents who can trigger an action, and we are able to build a physical robot, then it's inevitable that we are going to have robots going around the office space in a few years. And then, oh, there's also something called OpenAI real time voice chat. Okay, put it in the robot. Now you can talk to the robot. So we already have all the technology to take us and bring the progress to the next steps. We just have to not be so critical of it. Instead of expecting that everything is solved all of a sudden, just take let it take the time to evolve. Um, I feel like we are we're missing the point of what is happening. And instead of expecting it to come and solve all our problems, just trust the progress of this new technology. Let it evolve gradually, and all of a sudden, in 1 or 2 or 3 years, you will look to your right and there will be a robot. It's not going to be something that just came out of the blue. It's going to be built on the technology you have today. So just trust the progress.
That's a really great answer and a profound way to end this chat, with you basically saying that focus on the challenge that we've already been doing before, and now focus on the progress that will solve the same challenges. So it's just the same, what do you call it, dialectics of challenge and solution.
We have to understand that the solutions come when we understand our problems.
Yeah.
We already have most of technology. Obviously, the technology is going to evolve, but it's already here. The AI is here already. Let it be stitched together. But as an individual, as well as a business, start preparing for what you want to use it for. Instead of worrying about having it come in and just magically solve everything for you. Begin today. Let me, if I may, look at your data. Make it so that an LLM better can understand it. Look at your documents. Make it so that an LLM better can understand it. Look at your office space. Do you want to automate servings at the meetings? Prepare your office space for physical robots. Because when the physical robot is there, don't expect it to just be able to hop over everything and magically fly on the wall. But the robot is going to be there. The same with now the LLMs, they are here. Use them. But you cannot use them if you haven't enabled your business to be able to. So,
Great.
Yeah, I try to be realistic about these things, and yeah.
I love having had your realistic approach on the podcast, Matthias. The oldest man in the youngest body. So thank you so much, and thank you for being on The Only Constant. It's been a pleasure. You've listened to The Only Constant, a podcast sponsored by Basico.